They really believed they crossed the final line this time. Not rumors, not pressure. Not whispers behind your back. They paid an FBI agent to hurt you, to intimidate you, to shake you so deeply that you would finally fold. They imagined you sweating under a badge, heart racing, words stumbling, confidence cracking. They told themselves no one survives that kind of weight without breaking. They thought fear is universal. They thought authority always wins. What they never considered is that fear only works on people who still believe they can lose something. You had already buried the things fear usually steals. So when the agent stepped into your space, expecting chaos, he didn't meet panic. He met stillness. And stillness is the one thing power can't interrogate. The agent arrived trained to spot weakness. He had seen liars beg. He had seen tough men cry. He had watched confident people shrink when reality pressed too close. That's what he was paid to see again. But instead, he watched you sit there without defense, without attitude, without fear leaking through your body. Your eyes didn't dart. Your voice didn't shake. You didn't rush to explain or protect yourself. You didn't perform innocence or guilt. You simply existed. And that confused him. Because he wasn't trained to handle someone who didn't react. His authority depended on reaction. Without it, his role lost shape. You weren't resisting him. You were unaffected by him. And that is something no manual prepares a person for. They expected you to crumble under questions. You didn't. You answered calmly, briefly, honestly, without trying to impress or defend. The agent noticed something strange. You weren't afraid of consequences. You weren't trying to escape outcomes. You weren't bargaining with reality. He realized something unsettling. You had already accepted whatever could happen. And once someone accepts outcomes, intimidation collapses, threats lose weight, pressure becomes noise. He started asking himself questions he never asked before. What kind of person survives pressure by not fighting it? What kind of mind refuses to panic when power enters the room? He didn't feel in control anymore. He felt observed. Your silence did more damage than words ever could. You didn't argue. You didn't accuse the people who sent him. You didn't expose anything. You simply let the space stay quiet. And in that quiet, the agent began hearing himself think. He noticed his own discomfort, his own need to assert dominance, his own reliance on fear to do his job. Standing in front of you, he saw a person who didn't need to dominate anyone to feel solid. That shook him, because his entire career was built on pressure. And pressure means nothing to someone who already survived worse without breaking. They didn't see the shift immediately. Results. Confirmation that you were shaken. Instead, they noticed hesitation delays. Careful language. The agent didn't speak about you the way he spoke about others. He avoided details. He avoided certainty. That scared them. Because they paid for certainty. They paid for destruction. But what they got was doubt. The agent had seen something he couldn't name. Not strength in a loud way. Not rebellion. Something deeper. A grounded calm that made his role feel pointless. And when someone trained to break people feels pointless, it does something to their mind. The agent began replaying the interaction in his head. He realized you never tried to win. You never tried to convince. You never tried to escape. You were already free. That truth broke something inside him. Because he understood then that he wasn't dealing with a threat. He was dealing with someone who had already faced loss, fear, and collapse and walked through it intact. That kind of person doesn't fear badges or systems. They understand them. And that understanding removes their power. The agent wasn't scared of you hurting him. He was shaken by the idea that nothing he could do would matter. Your rise happened quietly after that. You didn't celebrate. You didn't confront the people who sent him. You didn't change your behavior. That's what terrified them most. You didn't act like a victim who survived. You acted like someone who was never at risk. While they waited for you to react, you kept moving forward, calm and focused. Their plan didn't damage you. It exposed them. They paid for force and discovered restraint. They paid for intimidation and found clarity. And clarity is contagious. Once the agent saw it, he couldn't unsee it. The psychological power shifted without a single threat. They lost control because they realized you couldn't be cornered emotionally. Fear didn't move you. Authority didn't shake you. Isolation didn't scare you. That meant their entire strategy had no leverage. They didn't know how to hurt someone who wasn't attached to outcomes. They didn't know how to break someone who already made peace with reality. And when people realize their strongest weapon doesn't work, panic follows. Quiet panic. The kind that eats from the inside. Now they look at you differently. They measure their words. They hesitate. They wonder what you know, what you saw, how much you understood long before they acted. They expected to see damage. Instead, they saw composure deepen, presence sharpen. The agent walked away changed, not because you threatened him, because you showed him something he couldn't explain. A mind that doesn't collapse under pressure resets the one applying it. That's what broke him. Control was never theirs to buy because control doesn't live in contracts, money, badges, or influence. It lives in the part of you that stays steady when pressure arrives. They thought control was something you could outsource, like hiring a storm to flood a city. They believed authority could replace understanding, that fear could replace insight. What they never learned is that fear only works on people who are still negotiating with themselves. You weren't. You had already settled your inner arguments long before they tried to weaponize power. When they paid for control, they purchased a costume, not the substance. And costumes fall apart the moment they meet someone who doesn't believe in the show. That's why their plan collapsed before it even began. You didn't resist. You didn't comply. You simply stood where they couldn't reach. At some point, they confused pressure with ownership. They assumed if they could surround you with systems, rules, and consequences, your mind would belong to them. But pressure doesn't own anything. Pressure only reveals what's already there. And what they revealed in you wasn't fear. It was alignment. You weren't split inside, trying to be two people at once. You weren't hiding a lie or chasing approval. You were whole. When a person is whole, pressure has nowhere to enter. It just slides off. That realization broke their illusion. They didn't lose control because you fought back. They lost it because there was nothing to grab. You were already standing on ground they couldn't purchase. Money fooled them into thinking leverage equals dominance. They assumed buying access to authority meant buying your reaction. But reactions are voluntary. You don't have to give them. They waited for you to flinch, to plead, to explain. You didn't. You understood something simple that they never did. The only control that matters is the ability to choose your response. Everything else is decoration. They paid for force and discovered restraint. They paid for noise and ran into silence. And silence doesn't belong to anyone who's trying to own it. They also misunderstood what breaks people. They thought consequences break people. Consequences only break those who haven't already accepted loss. You had. You had already walked through endings, watched things fall apart, survived moments where there was no rescue coming. When you've already faced that, threats lose their weight. What are they going to take from someone who already let go? What are they going to scare someone with who already made peace with the worst? Control depends on the fear of losing something. You weren't holding on to anything that could be used against you. That's why their leverage evaporated. Another thing they never accounted for was your relationship with authority. Authority only works when it's worshipped. You didn't worship it. You respected systems, but you didn't confuse them with truth. You didn't see badges as gods. You saw them as roles. Roles come and go. Integrity stays. When authority meets someone who understands this, it loses its hypnotic effect. The agent felt that. He expected reverence. He got calm. He expected fear. He got presence. And presence neutralizes performance. That's why control slipped through their fingers. They were trying to dominate someone who wasn't playing along. They also believed control came from speed. Act fast, pressure hard, don't give space. But speed works against shallow minds, not deep ones. You slowed everything down inside yourself. You listened more than you spoke. You let moments stretch. That forced them to reveal themselves. Rushed people expose intent quickly. Calm people collect information. You didn't need to outmaneuver them. You needed to wait. Waiting is unbearable for people who rely on control. The longer you stayed steady, the more they unraveled. Control hates patience because patience exposes weakness. Another truth that shattered them was realizing you weren't attached to being seen as innocent or guilty. You didn't care how they framed you. You weren't performing an image. That freedom terrified them. Control depends on narratives. If they can label you, they can manage you. You refused the label. You didn't argue it. You didn't fight it. You simply didn't live inside it. When someone steps outside your story, you lose power over them. They paid to control a character that no longer existed. They also underestimated how well you knew yourself. People who don't know themselves are easy to shake. They question every thought, every feeling, every reaction. You didn't. You trusted your inner ground. You didn't outsource certainty. When someone can't be gaslit, manipulation fails instantly. You didn't need reassurance. You didn't need to prove anything. You knew where you stood. That made every tactic they used feel hollow. Control doesn't work on people who already own their inner voice. Another piece they missed was this. Control is expensive. It requires constant energy, pressure, enforcement. Self-mastery is efficient. You weren't spending energy managing others. You were conserving it. While they burned resources trying to shake you, you invested in stability. That imbalance grows fast. They got tired. You got stronger. They escalated. You refined. Control always loses to mastery over time because control depends on force, and force runs out. Mastery doesn't. They're left now with the most painful understanding of all. They never had control over you, not even for a second. They only had an idea of you that wasn't real. They paid to hurt a version of you that no longer existed. The real you was already somewhere else, already settled, already grounded. That's why nothing worked. That's why the agent cracked. He wasn't facing resistance, he was facing absence. Absence of fear, absence of attachment, absence of leverage. Control never belonged to them because they mistook compliance for surrender. They thought if you followed procedure, answered questions, stayed calm, you must be submitting. They never understood that discipline is not obedience. Discipline is choice. You chose how to respond. You chose when to speak. You chose what mattered and what didn't. That choice is invisible to people who only understand domination. They confuse calm with weakness because they've never experienced calm that comes from certainty. You weren't behaving well because you were afraid. You were behaving deliberately because you knew exactly where your power lived. And that realization hollowed them out. They couldn't punish you into chaos. They couldn't corner you into panic. Every move they made only confirmed how little reach they actually had. Another thing that shattered their illusion was discovering you didn't internalize their authority. Authority only works when it crawls inside your head and starts speaking in your own voice. It tells you to doubt yourself, to shrink, to complain before thinking. That voice never took hold in you. You listened, processed, and filtered without letting it replace your own judgment. That terrified them. They rely on people collapsing internally before anything external happens. You didn't collapse. You didn't spiral. You didn't narrate fear to yourself. You stood steady inside your own mind while they threw weight at the outside. Control fails the moment it can't enter the inner dialogue. They never reached you because you never handed them the keys. What truly exposed them was how little you changed afterward. They expected damage, withdrawal, hesitation, some visible scar they could point to and feel victorious about. Instead, you continued, same focus, same presence, same clarity. That consistency dismantled every story they told themselves. If they had truly controlled you, something would have shifted. It didn't. The absence of change was the proof. You weren't shaken because nothing they did touched the core. They paid for disruption and got confirmation of your stability instead. That reversal is brutal for people who need to believe their power matters. It forces them to face the truth that their reach ends where self-mastery begins.